in just a second. Just make sure everything is set up.
Interviewer is called Steve Bartlett. He's so good.
He's what?
Steve Bartlett. I'll show him to you after. This is very, 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 very good.
Just a second. Right, okay. We are now live on YouTube.
Lovely.
Oh, Bruce is here.
Hello.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to spotlight for everyone. And spotlight. I'm just making sure it's being streamed okay, basically. And then we can get rolling.
Nice.
Yes, that's working to a satisfactory level, sort of. Okay, are we all good? Let's have a quick view at the gallery. Oh, wow, there's a lot of people in here today. Wow. Okay, how many people? God, we've got 30 odd people in.
Nice to see everyone.
Brilliant. Yeah, this is all gravy. All gravy. Lots of people, lots of new people, lots of old people, lots of people in general, which is all good. All good. All good. We're just going to give it like just 1 minute just to get everyone else in, and then we will get cracking. Then we're going to start recording. We've got lots of great questions already. I've got loads of great questions which I've written, which everyone will enjoy. Okay, we was actually just saying, somebody did put quite a good coaching question. If we get time, James says he will do like a coaching demo. If you have something that you want to work on, type into the chat box a 1-sentence description of the thing that you would want help with.
And you can do that anytime during the session.
You can do, yeah, and we'll have a look at it.
The same with questions and stuff.
Yeah, same with questions, and I'll field all these questions as they're coming in. All right, I'm going to start recording. Recording in progress. Okay, literally just give it 2 more minutes just to make sure everyone is in. The people of YouTube, you can hear me. We are streaming here. Sorry, I did have to go to the other stream. I might have to put something into the other thing actually to make sure that people know to come over to the other channel, which was a bit annoying. A chat with Jamie. I think they'll find it. I'm sure they'll find it. Okay. Close that email down. Close that down. And we are almost ready to go. All right, guys, I am actually going to mute everybody from now. You can unmute yourselves now. Jamie Smart, you will be unmuted, or I'm just going to close my emails. Okay. What would be quite interesting as well, just put into the chat box just where you're from. Just where are you in the world? Well, 35 people in here. We're streaming to YouTube. It's just interesting to know where people are from. Salisbury, London, Rotherham, Wisconsin. Wow. Surrey. I'm a Finn in Portugal. Berlin, Norwich, Brazil, Bolton. You can't get much different than that. Brazil and Bolton. Holland, Rotherham, Mexico. This is actually quite interesting. Morocco, Sheffield, London, Sandhurst. Wow, we've got people from all over today.
That's
Jamie,
great.
this is an international audience we've got going on right
I feel very, very honored, and I look forward to speaking to and connecting with everyone. was great. And I liked the thing Teresa put up for coaching of wanting to work on limiting beliefs or negative beliefs. I can't remember quite what it was, but that's the kind of thing that can be a really interesting thing from a demo perspective. Negative.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We're about ready to go. Let me give you the introduction. I actually met Jamie. We were just talking just before we came on here. When I first started learning about NLP and hypnosis and everything, you know, you do what you do. You go to YouTube, you type stuff in, and back then it was salad NLP. And you looked very different back then, Jamie. You know, you're half the man you used to be.
For starters.
Yeah, you were bald and bigger. Now you've got hair and slimmer. What's happening anyway? So it's amazing what NLP can do. And so I used to.
It wasn't until I left the field that changed.
And I can remember I actually had some of those flashcards and stuff that you used to do, and you know, it was a huge thing. Exeter and Denmark, stalking people here. And Jamie has spoken for me a number of times at interesting talks. But let me just give him his actual introduction. So Jamie Smart is a Sunday Times best-selling author. He's a speaker and coach as well. He shows individuals and organizations the unexpected keys to clarity, the ultimate leverage point for creating more time, better decisions, and meaningful results. And he's worked with audiences diverse as NATO Defense College, Hewlett-Packard, Dun & Bradstreet, and the mental health charity Rethink. He's appeared on loads of things such as Sky TV, the BBC, as well as numerous publications like The Times, The Daily Telegraph, The Huffington Post, and Psychologies magazine. Now, I wanted to get Jamie on because his book Clarity, which was what we're talking about today, it's in its second edition. It's 10 years anniversary in its second edition. And so we want to sort of discuss kind of what clarity is. And guys, if you've got questions, please do put them in the chat box and we will answer them either throughout or basically at the end. Also, people have given questions in advance as well, which has been great. So we do have a lot of stuff to get through. So before we get into clarity, before you wrote Clarity 10 years ago, what's your background? Because I know you had sort of NLP. So what was your background before you wrote the book?
Well, so I used to be an IT project manager, right? This is back in the 90s, 1990s. And then I went on an NLP training course in 1998. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. So I quit my job a couple of weeks later and retrained as an NLP trainer.
Wow.
And I mean, I was contracting and stuff in between. It wasn't as heroic and dramatic as it sounds. It probably was a couple of years of contracting. Then I started a business with a buddy and we did corporate work. And I started Salad, the company you mentioned, at the beginning of 2003. And it was all about teaching NLP, big focus on language and linguistics, which is a passion of mine. And hypnosis and change work and all that sort of stuff. And I loved doing that. It was really great. And then I was operating from within my kind of, if you like, my mindset was, yeah, this is good, but I'll be really happy once I achieve such and such, once I achieve this much money and this kind of business and all that sort of stuff. So extrinsic motivation. And I got to the point where I was kind of on top of the world in terms of accomplishment. And I wasn't happy. And I was like, well, what the hell's going on here? Because according to the rules of my industry, I should have white light shining out all my orifices. And instead, I'm kind of miserable. So I went back to the drawing board and I stumbled across something which I'd first been introduced to 10 years earlier in 1999, but I was kind of ready to hear it. And it was these principles. And I started exploring them and I started having insights. So my first realization was in early 2009, I realized, oh, everything you've been looking for outside of you is already there within you. Now, I don't mean like cool shoes and cars. I mean, because where would you put them? But no, I mean the experience of happiness, peace of mind, confidence, well-being, resilience, love, connection, the kind of things that you know, all of us on some level are looking for. I said, no, I'd read this before, right? Like I'd been around the track a few times. So it wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but I went from knowing it intellectually to knowing it like you know your own name. So that immediately reorganized things. Anyway, long story short, within a couple of years, I realized, because people had been saying, I'd been writing articles for a decade, and people were always saying, Jamie, you should write a book. But I didn't want to be the phobia cure guy. And there were so many great NLP books written. I didn't want to just throw out another NLP book. But I was like these principles behind clarity, they were psychology's best kept secret. And I was at a conference about them, and the guy who first uncovered them, a guy called Sid Banks, he had died, and the challenge most movements have is outliving the death of the founder. And I went to this conference, there are 100 people at it. The average age was in their 60s. They were referring to me as the young blood, and I was 45. I'm like,
wow.
But they were all talking about, oh, it's so difficult to get people interested in this stuff. And I was like, hold my beer. And I wrote the book Clarity, and it became a bestseller and all that sort of stuff. So Clarity and Results, they probably sold about 100,000 copies now. So a lot more people are looking in this direction. And so that's how I came to write the book.
And so how did you go from having an idea to writing Clarity to actually writing the book? Because it's most people like do self-publish or something like that, but you kind of sort of hit a home run.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. Well, I think it is, but stop me if it isn't. But I started out, I'd been running these big events, kind of like a couple of hundred people, you know, pay 100 quid for a ticket, spend 2 days, blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to run an event called Effortless Evolution. And I'd been trying different things. And I was speaking to a buddy of mine, and he said, well, why don't you write a book and then tell everyone, say that everyone who comes to the event can have a copy of the book once it's written? I said, what a great idea. I'll do that. And then I was like, fuck, I've got to write a book. And so I thought, well, I know what I'll do, because I had an email list with like 90,000 people on it or whatever. I said, I'll write a chapter. I sent out a message to the list. I said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do a chapter a week. I'll send it out to you. You can post your feedback on Facebook, and I'll read your comments, and a book will come out the other end of it. So I did that for like 26 weeks or something.
Wow.
And so the cool thing was, you know, it's kind of 2011, so it was relatively early in the Facebook game, but it got a lot of people engaged with that journey of getting the book written. So then I wrote the book, and I was speaking to a friend of mine, and I said, I don't know if I should self-publish or go for a book deal or what I should do. She said, well, what's your objective? I said, well, I want to establish authority and credibility for this understanding. This understanding is psychology's best kept secret. I want to put it on the map. She said, well, then you need a well-known publisher to publish it. Needs to get a book deal. So I started speaking to publishers, and I'll never forget it, Matt. You'll like this. This is very NLP, actually. So I went to a meeting with the editor who was interested in the book, the publishing editor, commissioning editor. And I was chatting with her, and she's like, well, we like the sound of it. And I said, well, I don't want, this was with Wiley, right? Like they publish hundreds of books each year, but there's only a handful of them that they really get behind. So I said to her, I'd like to be one of those books that you really get behind. I said, but I know every author wants that. You're publishing hundreds of books a year. I said, what has to happen for a book to be one of those books that you guys really get behind? She said, oh, well, that's actually very clear to me. She said, the whole team has to be wild about it. The publishing team, the sales team, the marketing, everyone's got to be wild about it. I said, oh, right, got it. How does that happen? She said, well, based really on two things. Number one, the book's got to have just a fantastic introduction. The introduction has to be amazing. I said, no kidding. And what else? She said, well, you got to have a great book proposal. It's got to be a fantastic book proposal. I said, right. Okay. I said, tell me what's the best introduction to a book you've ever published that's just sailed through those committees? She said, oh yeah, it was the second edition of Out of Our Minds by Ken Robinson. I said, thank you very much. And I said, can you send me 4 or 5 examples of the best proposals you've received? She's like, yeah, sure. She sent them over. I reverse engineered it, used that to write the intro, and the book just had a flashing neon light on it in the publishers, which is what I wanted, because it then went, you know, they really got behind it, sent it into Smith's and all that sort of stuff.
And you know what? This does come from sort of like NLP. If you just ask somebody for the answers, it just saves a lot of time.
It really does.
You know,
it really does.
Whenever I do a therapy session, the way I start is like, how will you know by the end of this session that it's been really good for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny if Teresa and I have a conversation later, one of the questions I'll be asking her in relation to negative beliefs is, you know, how would you know if that wasn't true? You know, what's the first thing that would let you know that that was just made up? Or something like that anyway.
Yeah.
Like I see her smiling and laughing. So that's a good sign at the very least.
Okay, now clarity. Okay, I could talk for ages on this. I know it's broken into 3 main parts, and we will kind of get to that. But as like a one-liner, or just like to describe it in a sort of like in a paragraph, what do you define clarity to be?
Wait, let me give you a couple of one-liners. Okay. Here's the first one. Clarity is just a way of talking about our innate capacity for peace of mind, well-being, high performance, love, connection, resilience, motivation, creativity, presence, connection, those things that everyone's looking for. My assertion is those are innate capacities. You've already got them. And obviously, Matt, you know, speaking to you as a coach, if those are things people already have within them, then it just makes my job a lot easier. Yeah, I don't have to give them anything. So yeah, that's one-liner. Here's another one-liner. You know how most people have a lot on their minds? Clarity is a simple understanding that takes things off your mind automatically. It clears your mind automatically without meditation or medication or anything, leaving you with the freedom and confidence to do whatever you want to do.
Brilliant. Do you know what? And that's what, when I work with people using IEMT, I'm not trying to impose my will on anyone. I facilitate. And IEMT is a bit different from NLP and hypnosis, where you are trying to impose your will a lot of the time and to try to get them to think differently. With IEMT, we look at why they're thinking that way so they can understand why, so they don't have to. Basically, begins to clear the filters. Nice. Now, I've been looking through the book, and it is in 3 main chapters, 3 main parts: the essential foundations, the deep drivers, and the way forward. So let's start with the essential foundations. Can you actually just explain what the essential foundations are and what you mean by them?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, obviously I spend 8 chapters talking about it, but in a nutshell, my assertion is that the 2 most valuable things a person can discover are, number 1, how experience is created, and I can talk a bit about that, and number 2, who you really are. So let's start with how experience is created. You know how, as you're watching and listening to this, it really seems like you're looking out through your eyes, like they're little windows in the front of your head, and you're looking out at a world out there. That's not what's going on. And this is old school neurology, right? What actually happens is data floods in through your senses, and then your deeper neurological and psychological properties go, what must be out there for me to be receiving this data? And then your deeper properties basically take a guess and hallucinate a 3D perceptual reality, which it's happening right now. I'm looking around the room I'm in, I'm like, holy shit, it still blows my mind that while for practical purposes, I'm looking out through windows in my head, what actually is going on is I'm walking around in a virtual reality. And the degree to which I have a high quality of life is the degree to which that internally generated virtual reality is a good fit and match for all the open manhole covers and telephone poles and other people out there, right? Like it's a map. But it doesn't look like that, right? So it looks to me like the vast majority of challenges that people face come from not realizing that they're living in an internally generated perceptual reality, and that their feelings are giving them real-time feedback about that internal hallucination, not about anything other than that. Like if you stop and think about it, a bunny rabbit who lives, not a specific bunny rabbit, but any rabbit who lives in the woods near where I live, they have to run for their life several times a day. And they have a fight or flight system that's job is to save their life. And they activate it once or twice or 3 times a day. And they're perfectly healthy. They don't have therapy bills. They're not smoking. They're having sex a lot and eating carrots. They're okay. For a lot of human beings, they're not in any real danger at all. They're not in any immediate danger, but their fight or flight system is running constantly because they're responding to internal hallucinations as though they're actual reality. So that to me is one of the 2 most valuable things a person can discover, not intellectually, but like to know it in your heart. You realize that for yourself, takes a lot off your mind. Second thing, which will sound way more hippie, is discovering who you really are. Now, what do I mean by that? Like, you could check this out, do this at home, touch your nose, go, this is my nose. Literally do it. It works better if you actually do it. But this is my nose. Even say the words. So that's your nose, but you're not your nose, right? You're the one who has a nose. Well, you're also the one who has thoughts and experiences thoughts. And you're the one who's aware of the sound of my voice. And you're the one who was born having an experience. When you were first having an experience, you wouldn't have even been able to pick yourself out of a police lineup, right? Like little kids up to the age of about 18 months, they can't identify themselves in a mirror. If you show a 14-month-old a mirror, they'll go walking up to it and they'll look behind the mirror to see where's the kid, because they haven't yet learned that that image on the screen is equal to them, because it's not. See, you've been, and me and all of us, we've been conditioned to believe that who we are is an image of self from a few feet away. And that's not true, but it's our self-image, as it's called, becomes like people will die to protect their self-image, and it becomes a source of challenge and difficulty and that sort of thing. So the work I do with people is I help them wake up to the truth of who they really are, because what you discover is that life's a lot more fun when you realize who you really are. And so yeah, in a nutshell, those are the foundations, but I stretch it out over 8 chapters with a lot of backup data.
Just compress it into 8 chapters. No, I think that once you realize that, your eyes don't see. It's I know, it's like, when I'm explaining to people about IEMT and they go, so I'm looking at this thing, but I was like, yeah, but it's not, basically your eyes are bits of your brain that stick out.
Yeah.
And it's interpreting information through these filters that we have, through what we've learned when we were younger, and now how we're experiencing things. And the emotions and stuff that you're experiencing are just basically these imprints in action,
But it's not only is it interpreting it, it's also creating a projection for us to interact with. That's the freak show, because as soon as you project into the future and the past, then you've got worry, then you've got regret and guilt, you've got all that sort of stuff. And it's made up, and people don't realize that they're making it up real time.
And when I realized that the world only exists in your head, because the world is not out there, it's only internal. And it took me a long time to actually sort of understand that. And you'll never know how anyone else experiences it. It's like it's like somebody was saying to me, when you're looking at a piece of art or listening to some music, you're not looking at the same thing, you're not listening to the same thing. Although you might be singing along and humming it, you're hearing or seeing 2 different things, because you're not seeing what's there, you're seeing your experience of it. And it's like, you
see that at a deep level, it's a game changer. But the thing is, if the world only exists inside your head, that includes your head, which means you've got 2 heads.
No, Jay. It is. And I think what I find interesting as well is that if the world only exists in your head, you can literally change the world by changing how you think and changing how you're experiencing it.
Tell you something that'll blow your mind, Matt. I was on a self-defense course with a buddy of mine. He runs this amazing self-defense course, and so we're doing it. And I've done it like 10 times or something. But he quoted a piece of research. I can't remember the guy's name, but he said they've done this research, and literally, when you make a decision, you create a new perceptual reality that aligns with that decision. So literally making this choice over that, a new perceptual reality. Now, again, I'm not saying we're creating multiple universes. That's above my pay grade. I'm not even saying the world only exists inside my head. I am saying our experience of it does. And, but it's incredible what's possible.
To take that a little bit further, actually, in IEMT, we have this pattern of chronicity called what if. Because the thing is, the more senior and determined and confident you are, you say what is. This is what reality is. When you ask what if, you're opening up all these different channels of thought, and this causes panic and overwhelm. So your brain is trying to process all this information. And so this is what, when I'm working with clients with anxiety, they're trying to hedge their bets because they're not confident in their abilities or their belief system. So instead of saying what is, by asking what if, it creates a lot of problems. I want to move into the middle part of the book. Now you explain, can you explain what these deep drivers actually are?
Well, so this is again, just a way of talking about something that everyone has. So my assertion is, and again, with all the stuff I'm saying, don't take my word for it. I encourage you to, do your own research, try it out in your own neurology in your own life. But what I'm saying is that so many of the qualities that people are looking for and trying to learn are actually things that you already have within you. So peace of mind and well-being, love and connection, motivation, resilience. Like you're born resilient. And how it looks to me is that we then learn things that we believe that have us believing that it works some other way, or that we don't have that stuff. So, we're innocently, like, I don't think there's anyone doing this on purpose, but we're innocently conditioned to believe that we're capable of far less than we actually are. And you are capable of more than you think, because you are more than you think. It's we each are, even if you already know that, and even if you've heard that before. Like I had been, working with the mind and teaching for many years, but I still had things like peace and love and joy and that sort of thing as states to be achieved, rather than something that's already there that you can just step into. So that the deep drivers is just looking at those things. So like, for instance, there's a chapter on each of the big ones. So it's things like presence, like we talk about authentic desires, intuition, peace of mind, so on and so forth. Just looking at each of those things that people write books about, how to be more resilient, or how to have more peace of mind, or how to, and it's like, no, they're innate qualities. You've already got them there. So the question often when people come to me, they'll ask, how do I be more X, or how do I experience more X? And I say, great question. There's an even better one, which is, what's been getting in the way of you experiencing that until now? And that takes us kind of back to part one, because the thing that gets in the way of people experiencing that is getting caught up in the mistaken belief that their experience is coming from somewhere other than them. You're living in the experience of the principle of thought taking form in the moment, in every moment. And you wake up to the truth of that. It's a game changer, total game changer.
No, and I can remember you when you give that sort of that diagram of, you think the feelings are coming from the toy.
Yeah.
And it is. And I think that what you were saying, that people they want to have an experience, they want to have an emotion, and it's when a condition is met. I will feel X when Y is achieved. So when I'm dealing with people in therapy, that might be, I will feel happy once I've achieved this amount of money, once I've got that partner, once I've got that car, once I've got whatever it might be. And weight loss is a big one. And also, if you're looking at what's going on at the moment, surgery and stuff, it's just crazy what people are doing to themselves, with all the, it's just because they think if I will have that, I will then be attractive, or I'll be beautiful, whatever it might be. And if you ever put that kind of condition, I will feel X when I've achieved Y, one of two things is going to go wrong there. You're either going to achieve it and not be happy, or not achieve it. And it's that whole thing. It's like the one worst thing than not achieving your goals, achieving them, because you're trying to predict how you're going to feel. But what you're saying, from what I understand in clarity, is you don't have to achieve these things to actually feel this way, because it's already within us.
And here's the cool thing about that, because often people hear that, go, oh, well, if I didn't think I needed to, I don't know, make money or start a business or lose weight or whatever in order to be happy, I wouldn't be motivated to do anything. But it's no, there's a deeper intelligence there. So once you realize you've already got that stuff, then you're actually free to take more calculated risks and do the things you truly want to do, and that sort of thing. So it's very, very powerful to wake up to what you've got going for you, because what it means is, at the level of principle anyway, you don't need things to be any particular way in order to have a beautiful life. Once you know that, then you're free to kind of do whatever you want to do, whatever makes sense to you, and you'll find that there's like an innate wisdom that guides you in that. So it's, by the way, it may be that I make a lot of assertions, but there may be things I'm saying which are like, that sounds like total bullshit to me. Do feel free to call me on it, or ask questions about it or anything like that. Because like I say, I don't want you to take my word for this. I encourage you to test it out and try it out for yourself.
I think especially at the moment with, consumerism and the on-demand society that we live in, and the constant scaremongering that happens, through our media, because that's what sells. People are looking for exterior stimulus and stuff to try and feel what they actually can feel, if they, just understood about a bit of how their mind works. And because if you say, imagine if once I get that watch, I'll feel happy, right? You've got that watch, you're still not happy, so now you need another watch or a bigger watch, and you'll never, and I know really rich people who just aren't happy.
Oh yeah. I mean, like if material success was a predictor of happiness and well-being, then OK Magazine would be full of stories about celebrities with great marriages and happy relationships and no drug problems and no therapy bills and that sort of thing. But no, it doesn't work like that. It's kind of interesting, actually. One of my clients, is a guy called Carl Harvey. I'll be happy when I get a Mazda MX-5 sports car. And he'd been like visualizing it for years, and he got it. And he loved it for about a week. And then he was like, oh, that isn't it either. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because it comes from within. And so he got that. Like, I had a chat with him about it, and he's like, oh, got it. And it's truly transformational when you realize that you've already got what you've been looking for until now. It just gives an incredible freedom to go after what actually makes sense for you.
Oh, brilliant. And then the last third of the book, or the last part, is this, is it looking forward? The way forward.
Yeah, the way forward is just looking at, okay, so how can you live with more? The backstory to this, Matt, is when I first stumbled across these principles, it was, like I said, psychology's best kept secret. So my first insight was, oh, the fact that everything you've been looking for outside of you is already there within you. My second insight is I realized, oh, the fact that you can see or hear or feel means you have the source of resilience and realization and transformation already there within you. Well, that changed my work with clients, made me instantly a better coach, because all of a sudden I knew, made me so much more hopeful for my clients. If I get a chance to coach anyone, you'll see what it's like. It's really cool. So my third insight was in June of 2009. I realized, oh, these are principles for psychology. This is to psychology what the discovery of germs was to medicine. Well, literally that morning, I called up my office. I said, we're getting out of the NLP business. There's principles for psychology. This is what I'm going to be doing for decades. So let's go. And what I realized early on is, oh, I'm part of a very small number of people who are saying it works this way, and the rest of the world, the other 8 billion people, are saying it works the opposite way. So I'm like, okay, it probably makes sense to surround yourself with people who are looking in the same direction as you. So I did that. And I say, okay, how can you take this understanding in a world where everything's telling us it works the other way around? How can you build this understanding more and more fully into your life? So that's what the way forward's about. It's like, how do you experience more of a deep feeling for yourself and for life and for the world, and live from that creativity and clarity that brings.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I've just got a few more questions, and then we'll do a demo, and then we've got some more questions and stuff as well, because I am conscious of time, but I could listen to you talk for hours, Jamie. I think
me too. I go on and on and on.
Well, we'll get it on replay. And I think that what your work does and what I do through IEMT, I think it's very, very similar. And I think that, yeah, I don't teach people anything. I facilitate within them, but I'm not trying to get them to think a certain. So when I first learned about hypnosis, you are literally reading them a script to try and get them to change. And I was never happy about that. So now when I work with people, it's like, what's the problem? What would you like to get from it? And then I work within literally what's stopping them rather than what they're trying to feel, basically.
Well, it's funny. I think you'd probably resonate with one of my statements that I make when I'm teaching coaches, which is, I've got nothing to say about what someone should or shouldn't do, what they should or shouldn't think, what they should or shouldn't feel. All I'm pointing to is, here's how it works. And what we find is, once people really grok how it works, things transform effortlessly.
And recently I worked with a bunch of people, and I said, each person will have their own experience. There's no right or wrong here. It's just kind of what is, in that sense. It's the 10th anniversary of Clarity.
Yeah.
So it's been out for 10. And I always do, like, when I'm out, in bookshops, I always do have a look for it. And obviously, because it's been on the re-release, it's everywhere. And I know on your Facebook, you've got loads of people holding the book, taking pictures and stuff everywhere. Just a quick thing. Have you ever been in and just like signed a few copies just for a laugh?
Funny you should say that. I'm traveling through Birmingham Airport tomorrow because I'm off to Gran Canaria for a week, and I'll probably do some stealth signing while I'm in there. So I'll just literally in the bookshop just grab 6 off the shelf and sign them all, and then put them back. And get my girlfriend to stand between me and the shop staff so they don't think I'm just, I am officially, I am vandalizing them, I suppose, but hopefully.
I'll sign a few as well if you like. Okay, now it's the 10th anniversary. We were talking about this just before as well. What's been added, or what's changed in this edition?
So a couple of things. First of all, I've had 10 more years to really road test everything in the book, and also 10 more years worth of insights and clarity on the teaching points and that sort of thing. So I did a pretty brutal edit on it. I took a lot out and just said, okay, what are just the essential parts? But then I put some stuff in. So each chapter has a what the research says piece, with a piece about some research, and then links to like peer-reviewed research or news articles and that sort of thing, so people can develop their own reference base for this understanding. But then through the book, we also did case studies with people on various things like fear of public speaking and that sort of thing. And what I've done is I've added a new chapter called Troubleshooting Enlightenment, and we've got 10 case studies, some of them 10 years on follow-ups from the original case studies in the book. So you can see what 10 years of clarity does for someone in their life. And then I've taken also in chapter 25, 10 of the most common challenges, issues, that sort of thing. So things like fear of public speaking, burnout, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, purpose and direction, the things people challenge with goals, authentic desires, that sort of thing. We've got a section on each with a case study for each, so that people, just to make it very, very practical. And yeah, those are the main changes. But here's the other thing, Matt, you know what's changed even more is the world itself. Like when I wrote the first edition of Clarity, it looked to me like we're at a really incredible time in history, because it was the information revolution was really taking off. And I included a quote from Herbert Simon, who said, "What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients." So I included that quote in 2013. Well, that was before social media algorithms. It was before Twitter and before TikTok. It was before the chat GPT and artificial intelligence. And the most valuable commodity on the planet now, it isn't data, it's attention.
Yeah.
Human attention. So if you stop and think about it for a moment, the quality of your experience of your life is a function of the quality of your attention, right? Like, I'm very grateful that we've got a group of people here, either live or on the replay, that are putting their attention with us, Matt, and so part of my objective is to give you, the best experience of your attention I possibly can, right? But all over the world, attention is being gamified and fractionated and splintered. And it seems to me that there are two things. One is, first of all, we're living in a humanitarian crisis of mental health. And people desperately need to get access to that source of mental health and well-being that's innate in everyone. Like, stop and think about it for a moment. Babies aren't born needing therapy, right? Like, there's an innate mental health and well-being that we come in with. So we need that. But just as importantly, we've got really important decisions facing us as individuals, as societies, and as an entire civilization. And we've got a bunch of fuckwits at the wheel for the most part. Like, and I think more than ever, we need, wisdom to be able to make really important decisions about everything from technology to how we spend our time to all that sort of thing. And so it's just my hope and fervent prayer that we elect people with more wisdom into positions of power all around the world. So that's why the book's important from my perspective.
We can only hope with this. Jamie, let's do, because I do have more questions, and I've also got people who put questions in. I think what would be best, because I'm always just conscious of time, let's see if, I think it was Teresa, if she wants to do a demo, so we can see some of this in action, and then I've got more questions and other people can ask questions, because we're going to go past 8 o'clock, aren't we? So Teresa, let me just find you. Would you want to do a quick demo with Jamie? I can unmute you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Let me just find where she is.
Let me explain the rules of engagement. Teresa or Teresa?
Either.
Okay.
Teresa.
I'm going to work with Teresa for probably between 10 and 15 minutes maximum. I'm going to do my best to have a big impact that makes a difference to Teresa. She's going to get whatever she gets. I may talk to you guys at some point and explain what I'm doing or that sort of thing. I'll happily answer questions afterwards. Please don't type suggestions into the chat because it'll pop Teresa or me out to read your stuff, and just leave that until afterwards. And yeah, we'll have fun. So Teresa, you said, if I remember correctly, you said that the thing you wanted coaching on was working on negative beliefs. And I said earlier that my first question would probably be, well, how would you know if the session had been a big success and all that stuff is just no longer an issue?
Well, I suppose the negative faulty belief that I've got would turn into a more positive constructive belief.
Got it. Got it. Well, let me ask you a weird question. How do you know that you've had a faulty negative belief?
Because it keeps occurring with negative impact on myself. I'm questioning myself. I'm questioning myself in a not in a confident way, in a way that, you know, I can say I've done all this therapy, done all this learning, all this research, whatever. When I get triggered, I go back to this negative belief system again, and it's like, no, let's start. You know, I've got to start again. What's happening?
So if I were to wave a magic wand, Teresa, and you wake up tomorrow morning and this is just being transformed, how would you know?
I wouldn't until a certain thing that I'm not going to disclose what it is, but there is a certain thing that I can see. I can be watching a TV program, I can be talking to somebody, and they might say, oh, I went to such and such an area for my holiday. Then I'd feel the negative feelings coming again.
Well, now help me out with something, Teresa. And I'm going to sound like a total dickhead, so please forgive me for this. But if I understand rightly, sometimes you feel uncomfortable feelings. Negative feelings.
Painful, negative pain from feelings right here in my body. You know?
Got it. And here's the thing that is going to make me sound like a dickhead. So what? Like, how does that stop you creating what you want to create in your life?
Because I change my behavior.
Oh, okay. So the issue isn't that you sometimes have uncomfortable feelings. The issue is you think that they're giving you valuable information about yourself and what you're capable of.
The issue is it retracts me back to a time of unpleasantness, and the body remembers that unpleasantness, and the body then begins to feel as if it was happening now.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that is it fair to say that on a very real level, you don't realize that it's not happening now?
No, I actually do realize it's not happening now.
Well, and I'm going to sound like a terrible coach, Teresa, but and forgive me, I'm saying I hope you can feel my compassion as I ask this question.
I can.
But why does it? I know it's uncomfortable, right? But how can that change your behavior?
Because I become angry. And most of my time I'm tolerant, calm, placid, absolutely believing other people having their own thoughts, feelings, and behavior, and respect that, can see from another point of view. But one particular trigger, when I get there, I lose control. I become a person that I don't want to be.
Got it. I understand now. I think I understand. So
and this has gone on for many years.
Oh, I get it.
And I've tried many things to become rational about it and talk to myself. And I don't.
Oh, I don't think you're irrational.
I feel
Oh, I know. But here's the thing, Teresa. It looks to me like you're doing what makes sense to you at your current level of understanding. Like as things are at the moment, if you heard that, I don't know if it's a word or whatever it is, but if you heard that word, then it makes sense to you to get angry.
Because it's unprocessed.
Well, now I'll take your word for that, but if it's been making sense for you to get angry when you hear that word.
But my innate self is saying, This is your feeling. It's not fair for your anger to come out on somebody else.
Well, yeah, but that's not your innate self. That's intellectualizing. I'm talking at a simpler level, at a more basic level. Until now, it's made sense for you to get angry when you hear that word, right?
I don't know if it has made sense.
Well, I'll tell you why I say that. Want to hear why I say that? Because if it didn't make sense, you wouldn't do it.
But I don't know why I'm doing it.
That's a different story. I'm not saying you know consciously. I'm saying at a deep level, your system, until now, your system is, as far as your system is concerned, it's protecting you or something, like it's doing something that makes sense.
I think you've just helped me to think a little bit differently there. I think that I am fighting internally now in that anger that I didn't do at the time.
Yeah, well, maybe, but that may be what's going on. I'm going to sound mad when I say this, but there's a way in which I'm looking at it much more simply. I'm saying whatever the reason is, and we may never even know the reason. I don't really even care what
There is an answer.
Yeah, well, there might be, but who knows, right? But it has made sense until now. And my bet would be you'll continue to do it until it no longer makes sense.
When I'm not in it, it doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about when you are. Now, here's the thing though. So stay with me, Teresa, because I'm not trying to get you to figure it out in your head. I'm teaming up with the aspect of you that's been doing this thing for all these years. And I see it. I'm like, I recognize the wisdom and intelligence that has been taking care of you all these years and making sure that you get what you need, right? Like I recognize it. And it has so far, it has made sense to do that. Now, my promise to you is, as soon as it no longer makes sense, you're not going to do it.
So I'm going to fire back to you and say, if I've been trying to make sense of it all this time, why aren't I getting that feeling now? For years.
What do you do when you say what feeling are you talking about? Why aren't I getting what feeling now?
Anger, unpleasantness, behavior, unpleasant behavior, to self and others, you know, and the belief is somewhere in this is how I'm seeing it. The belief is somewhere in my mind that I can't get rid of this.
Yeah, well, so I'm not even trying to get rid of it. So yeah, I know, but here's the thing. This is not my first time, Teresa. I've done this kind of work a lot, right? And there's something that I know about what you've been, seems to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, you've been trying to sort this out for a long time, right? Like years.
A long time.
Yeah. And the approach you've taken, while you may have learned lots of cool stuff and made lots of progress in all kinds of ways, this thing's still going on until now, right? So my assertion to you is, I'm not looking at it the same way you do. And if you were to see it from a different perspective, that would do something for you. Now, I don't know if you want to see it from a new perspective, but I'm saying there's a perspective that could help you out.
I certainly do, but I don't know how to get it.
Well, that's why you're talking to me, but it's going to require you to just see if you can follow along. I'll try this real one step at a time. One of my basic beliefs, if you like, is that every human being on this planet is always doing what makes sense to them at their current level of understanding. Not in their heads, Teresa, not the things they think. I'm talking at a deep level. at a deep, like you've evolved over millions of years. Mother Nature didn't put your intellect in charge of making sure that happened. That's a deep systemic thing. So at a deep systemic level, it has made sense to you until now to do this. Like by definition. So now I'm not asking you to figure this out or to decide whether you agree with me. I'm like, you look around the world, you see millions of people doing crazy ass shit, much crazier than anything you or I have ever done. They're doing what makes sense to them at their current level of understanding.
I get that.
Yeah. Now, what do you get?
I get that other people will do whatever state of mind they're in and follow that belief system.
Well, I'm not even talking belief systems. I'm talking something evolution, something deep. You've evolved over millions of years, Teresa. You're the spearhead of evolution. Belief systems are like the tip of the iceberg. There's deep wisdom in your body, in your mind, in your being, that's job is to ensure that you survive and thrive and all those things. And that deep wisdom has had you doing this until now. And so here's the fun bit. My prediction is you will continue doing it until the moment that your embodied understanding changes. And that embodied understanding can change in a heartbeat, can change with a single insight, a single realization. And you have an innate capacity for realization. So that's where it's going to come from. It's not going to come from trying to figure it out. It's going to come from taking the night off from thinking about it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
What makes sense about it?
It makes sense that if I weren't resisting this change, because something inside me resisting it, I feel that resistance every time that I behave in a way I don't want to behave, because I know what you say to be correct in every part of my heart and wisdom and every year.
Well, here's the thing, Teresa. That could change before our conversation finishes tonight. You could have an insight, you could have a realization, and you have a realization, you'll be living in a different world. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to Matt for a bit, but I'll check back in with you before we wrap up for the night and see how you're doing, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Just spotlight me again. And I'm back.
He's back.
Turn me off.
I'll turn you off. Don't worry, Teresa. Okay.
So, shall I say anything about that session or anything like that? Or do you want to ask questions?
Yeah. Well, people, if you want to start asking questions, but if you want to sort of give an overview of like the framework or what you are sort of trying to do there.
Okay. So what I'm looking to do with any client, I'm working on the basis that what I want to do is I want to get their world. I want to find out what's going on for them. And I want to get a connection. I want to get in a feeling of connection with them. Because I find that when people feel like you genuinely understand them, they kind of relax, their defenses drop down, especially with any kind of limiting beliefs or anything like that. They tend to be quite defended. Now, my kind of strategy, if you like, with anything like that is an easy example of this would be like a drug addiction or alcoholism. Someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I got to stop drinking. And I'm like, well, I guess you're drinking so much because it's been making sense to do so. And I'm like, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's like, well, so they've put themselves in a double bind, right? Like, I know they wouldn't be doing it if it didn't make sense. And so I want to get on the same page with the aspect of them that's been doing it. And kind of the message I want to send to that aspect of them is kind of, thanks for all your hard work. Thanks for keeping the wheels on to the point where you could come and see me. And let's see if we can find an even more healthy way of getting your needs met than injecting heroin in your neck or whatever it might be. So like, I know it's a hardcore perspective, but I just don't see people doing things that are irrational. I see people doing things that they don't have a good intellectual understanding of, but I see people doing things that make total sense at a deep level. And as soon as their embodied understanding of life themselves, what they need shifts, that the behavior changes. And that's when things shift for Teresa, that's what's going to do it. She's going to do something like go, oh, I suddenly thought about it and realized, oh, it'll just look different, and or it'll feel different or whatever. And then it won't be an issue anymore.
Brilliant. Does anyone have any questions about that demo in particular? Whilst people are typing that, now you actually teach, you don't teach clarity, but you teach, you teach people on how to be clarity practitioners, clarity trainer.
Yeah, clarity coaches.
Clarity coaches, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, what we do is we start sort of like the book in a way. We start with the foundations, your grounding, and it's those kind of looking at those two facts, how experience is created and who we really are. And we start there with where you're coming from, because for anyone who's doing change work with individuals, the biggest leverage point you've got is where you're coming from. It's like your come from, which includes your mindset, if you like, your understanding of life, but also includes the feeling you're in. Like the people pick up on the vibe that you're in, and that can make a big difference in and of its own right. In fact, I kind of go further. Like it looks to me like the feeling you're in is the thing that's going to do most of the heavy lifting with the other person. So we teach that, and then we look at impact and growing your practice and all that sort of stuff. So the clarity certification training is like a 10-month program, because we do it in modules, because I want people to be able to see the differences in their own lives. You know, the nature of the program is very transformational, so that the person who walks out the other end of the program isn't the same person who walked in. As you know, you'll often see this with transformational stuff.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the training.
If people are interested in becoming a clarity coach, what would be the next step? How often do you do it, and what would be the next step?
I do it once a year. If you can find out more at jamiesmart.com/coach. It's by application only. So people put in an application, and then I go through it, ask them questions and that sort of thing. We only train 36 people a year. So it's very much kind of hand-picked, and I want to make sure that each person who joins is a good fit for the group in a bunch of different ways. So we have a fairly in-depth screening process.
I'll send that link out to people afterwards as well. Just got a question here. Maybe the words "make sense" were too ambiguous. Do you mean your body requires the physiological reaction of itself? Would it be fair to say when your body grows to a greater understanding of how to defend itself, you will react differently?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because I don't know that that's what's going on. But I know that I've worked with lots of people with things like PTSD, and that, funnily enough, there's a story in the book. I got a message from a woman called Helen. I'll read it to you, actually. Helen's an Army veteran who'd been undergoing treatment for PTSD for many years. She had an insight while reading Clarity, and everything changed. She wrote to me saying, I'm sure your book Clarity wasn't intended to treat mental illness, but I'm a PTSD veteran and it's helped more than psychotherapy and CBT. I am hopeful again. Thank you. So she explained that she'd been taught various CBT techniques, but that they were most difficult to use at the times she needed them the most. Like when she was most triggered, that was the hardest time to put anything into practice. She said, I've realized that I'm okay. I was diagnosed with PTSD and told there's no cure, but here I am making more strides because of your book than I have in 10 years of treatment. Thank you. I'm sitting here literally feeling as if I'm a mentally healthy person. I've never felt that way before. So I did a 6-year follow-up with her and she's still doing great. But I'm talking at a more foundational level, Dylan, which is that everyone in the whole world all the time is doing what makes sense. Like if I scratch my nose, it's because it makes sense. It makes sense to do so. It is in alignment with our embodied understanding of reality. And no one's ever going to do anything that's out of alignment with their embodied understanding of reality. So I don't even care about the content, whether it's about defending ourselves. It's just like, yeah, like simple example, everyone here on this call has certain things that they know they shouldn't do, but they do it, whether it's, eating chocolate cakes or I don't know, whatever your flavor of, I know I shouldn't, but I do it. And everyone here has things they should quote unquote do, but they don't do, right? Like if quitting smoking or was just a matter of doing what you should do, you'd go to the doctor and he'd say, hey, stop smoking, lose some weight, that sort of thing. You say, oh, gee, thanks, doc. That's great advice. I'll go do that now. But we only ever do what makes sense at the level of our embodied understanding of reality, right? And so we can tell what makes sense by looking at our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings, where we're basically doing what makes sense at our current level of understanding. You want your world to change, that's going to change when what makes sense changes, when your map of reality. So to put it in NLP terms, everyone's got a map or model of reality, but it's embodied, right? It's not something they're consciously aware of. Like my map of reality is allowing me to speak and construct sentences and that sort of thing, but I'm not consciously aware of it. But the only way I would be speaking Chinese is if that made sense, and I had that all wired in. I don't have any of that wired in, so Chinese isn't going to come out of my mouth. So we're always doing what makes sense at our current level of understanding.
Brilliant. Do you know what? I've got a few questions I just want to get through. I think that most of the questions that people have submitted have sort of already been answered by what we've done today. What's the biggest obstacle to achieving clarity in today's fast-paced world with a myriad of distractions competing for our attention? How do we focus?
My take on that would be that the biggest obstacle is being confused about how your experience is being created and who you really are. Those two things. It's going to be much harder to distract you with the myriad of stuff. The social media algorithms are literally gamifying our limbic systems, and it's ever so easy to get hijacked by that stuff if you're confused about where your experience is coming from. It can really seem like I need to stay up all night checking Facebook or whatever. So, no, that's not what's going on.
So one thing here, what's your best advice to become a successful practitioner? I'll just read you word for word, actually. What's your number one tip for private practitioners who want to succeed?
Well, it's going to depend on what your model of success is. I think the number one tip would be become really, really fucking good at what you do. Like practice, work with tons of people and get really good at it. While there's lots of talk about marketing and that sort of thing, and there's all kinds of cool things you can learn about that, I just haven't found a substitute for being really good at what you do, because it gives you two things. First of all, you feel confident that you're clear on who you can help and who you can't help, and that telegraphs to people. So that's good. But also you feel proud of the stuff you do and you learn and that sort of thing. So it's a virtuous circle. So my number one tip would be get really, really good at what you do. That's always going to help you. The other thing, and I've got a chart I want to share with you for this, because I find this really, really useful. This looks so obvious to me in terms of business success, but I find a lot of people don't really get it. But when it comes to being a practitioner, so it's what I call the trusted advisor matrix. If you want to be a coach, a therapist, a change worker, or something like that, you need two things. First of all, you need a relationship with the client. Okay, now that takes time to build. It doesn't have to take a long time. My rule of thumb is you got to hang out with someone one way or another for between 4 and 7 hours before they're going to be comfortable to hire you to work with them in a therapeutic capacity or a coaching capacity. Now that 4 to 7 hours can happen in a webinar or reading articles or listening to podcasts. You don't have to be there. It can be on the phone, whatever. But you got to get to the point where they know you and like you and trust you, right? But then the second thing is that client has to be present to some perceived need or want or desire or problem or solution or transformation that really matters to them. They got to be present to it. And if you've got both of those, they know you, like you, and trust you, and they're present to some change they want to make, then that puts you in the trusted advisor zone. Right. And for most coaches, therapists, change workers, if you're not in the trusted advisor zone, you're not getting hired. Right. No one's going to go, like, I may be overstating it, but people more and more, they're shopping around before they buy. So they're going on the internet, they're listening to stuff and that sort of thing. And they want to get to know people before they do business with them. Like, if you stop and think about it, if someone's going to hire me to do like my headline package is my CEO intensive, right, which costs £50,000, and it involves someone spending 3 days with me working one-on-one. Well, no one's going to spend 3 days with me if they don't like spending time with me. They'd have to be crazy to do that. There are going to be people on this call who are like, I never want to hear from that guy again. Great, but there'll be some people on this call who are like, oh, I want to hear more. So you want to work with the people who enjoy spending time with you, who know you and like you and trust you. And that just takes time. So the intersection of those two things in terms of business success, that looks really important to me.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think what you were saying there before is just get really good at something. And when anyone does my IEMT training, I say the first thing you want to do is just practice, 100%. And get the case studies, get the testimonials. But what I have found is that some people who want to get the right mindset, mindset is not skill set, and I believe that a mindset and confidence comes when you're competent and not actually by thinking you're good and then being good. I believe that you just get really, really good at it. And so the one thing I'm good at is doing IEMT trainings, and that's what I focused most of my time on. And if you look at the amount of content, this is content which I'm putting out now. I do Facebook Lives nearly every day. I've got hundreds of hours of videos on my YouTube, and I put this content out. So when people actually speak with me and interact with me, they do know, like, and trust me, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because I'm always on Facebook. I'm always doing stuff like this. And so I always say, if you want to get good at something, choose one thing to get good at, because when you become a practitioner or a therapist of any kind, especially hypnotherapists, you do everything from A to Z because you get a book of scripts, right? But you can't be good at everything. So choose what you want to get good at, do it a lot, and become like the go-to person for that thing. And that's all you need to do. So I get a lot of referrals and stuff, especially for training, just because that's where I focus my attention. And I demonstrate things. So I've got 50 interviews on my YouTube channel of people who've been through the training. So this isn't a had a great time, Steve. It's a 45-minute interview,
Right.
you know, 50 of them. And so yeah, so we've just got a come.
Keith asked a question about ADHD, which I'll speak to.
Yeah.
So Keith asked, do I work with ADHD? And if so, is there a specific approach? I work with lots of people who are off the scale ADHD because I work with lots of entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. But my come from with ADHD is not that it's an issue. It's a particular talent set. So I just look at, okay, well, what does the person want? And then we work from there. So if what they want is to be, you know, more able to organize their time and their attention and their priorities, we look at that. If what they want is to be able to experience more peace of mind, we look at that. So it'll depend what they want. So I work with lots of people who have ADHD. I don't work with trying to cure ADHD, quote unquote, because it looks to me more like a talent or a gift than a D in terms of a disorder. It doesn't look like a disorder to me. It looks like something that is a really powerful creative mode in some contexts and can be a bugger and get in your way if you don't understand how it works.
And we've got a great question here. It's not really a question, really, from Bradley. This sounds like coherent empathy. The Bruce Ecker references, not that it matters what it's called, of course, essentially giving credibility to something the person is trying to reject and control, as if it's an alien force to be obliterated or something else. The fear can ironically fuel the repetition of the very fear we're trying to hide from. Embrace it, thank it for its trying to help you and invite you to find a new way. I suppose this is almost like almost like, no, it's not the 6-step reframe, but it's understanding that what you've been doing so far has basically kept you alive, but you no longer therefore need it to carry on.
Yeah, I've not heard of coherence empathy, but I'll look it up. That's very interesting. What you said, Bradley, that the fear fuels the repetition, 100%. What I find almost always when I'm working with someone who's got some issue that they've been trying to resolve or change or that sort of thing, the thing that holds it in place is a feeling that they're trying not to feel. And so I want to make it okay to feel that. I want to kind of telegraph to them, you can handle it. You can handle it. You got nothing to be afraid of. You're going to be okay. And I want them to feel that at a very, very deep level, to know that they're safe, to experience whatever they need to experience. And it's incredibly transformational. So yeah, I'll explore coherence empathy. That's very interesting. Thanks for the heads up.
Okay,
definitely,
guys.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, guys, does anybody else have any questions? I'm just getting obviously we have run over, of course. If anybody's got any questions, you can unmute yourself and speak to Jamie directly.
Yeah, feel free. Teresa, anything to report at this end of the session?
Lots of food for thought. Absolutely. I like what Bradley's just written about the fear of what it is. And you need to invite yourself to have a better way. Yeah. And I think something that you just said about feeling the fear and knowing you're safe.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm safe yet because I don't like my behavior. Yeah,
so I'm going to leave you with something like, it's so interesting. I was interviewing a woman last weekend. She read my book in 2015, and then she was in the Nepal earthquake of 2015. She said it was terrifying. She told me something I didn't know, which is, if you're in an earthquake, the earthquake came, but then there were aftershocks every few minutes for days afterwards. And it was just terrifying. And she was totally freaking out, and everyone was freaking out. And she was sitting the whole family was moved into one room so that, because the buildings were falling, thousands of people were killed. And then she was sitting there, it was between aftershocks, and she noticed, she was still terrified, but her niece was comforting their dog. Her 5-year-old niece was telling the dog, oh, it's okay, you don't have to be afraid. And she suddenly saw, oh, your experience of terror isn't coming from the earthquake that passed away. It's coming from your own thought in the moment. And the issue isn't that you shouldn't think that. The issue was you thought it was there was more to it than that. And she had an insight, and all of a sudden she realized there's nothing that can harm who you really are. There's definitely stuff that can harm your physical body, right? So, you know, don't run with scissors and be careful petting strange dogs, but there's nothing that can harm who you truly are at the heart of your being. You're perfectly safe. And when she realized that, it was like years of flinch response fell out of her system. So I'll leave you with that, Teresa. Thank you for a lovely demo. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, if anyone has any other questions, we'll just take a couple more. If you want to unmute yourselves and just speak to us directly. So Bradley, there, negative reinforcements, i.e. we do, I can't read today. We habitually fixate on what we don't want to feel rather than what we do want to feel gets in our own way. Bloody thing there. This way, rather than gives us a positive feeling. Switching those can be extremely powerful. Absolutely. Sorts of like, you know, when people doing things, and like the more times you do something, the more it's sort of ingrained within you. It's like if you look at a field, if you cut the corner, the more times you do it, it becomes a path, you know, in itself, and it becomes the actual default, and we don't actually know why we're doing something. You should be able to unmute yourselves.
I can unmute Keith. There we go.
Oh, I know. I got the tick mixed up. So you should be able to unmute yourself now anyway. So Keith.
I have done. Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Jamie, I meant more perhaps ADD and a freeze due to overwhelm. There's so much going on that actually nothing gets done.
Yeah. Well, so when I'm working with someone with that, my starting point is, okay, so what do you want? What do you want? Because everything I'm going to do with a client is going to be oriented around what are their goals, what are their objectives, what are they wanting to create in the world, and then organizing that around whatever they need to see in order to make that a reality.
Yeah, it's like the slowing down and not, you know, the bright shiny objects sparking off, and it's like dropping, really, in a way. I just get personally a sense of dropping energy, so there's more of a stillness starting to come in, rather than it's almost like an excitement, but almost a fearful response of there's that much.
Yeah,
that many plates spinning. We're really afraid of stopping them spinning, that like a fearfulness.
Yeah, but it sounds like when that energy kind of drops, that I liked the way you described it, that stillness.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me, Keith.
Good. Thank you. It is. And a lot about what you're saying about our intrinsic, authentic self, we're heading in that direction, I sense.
Yeah. Right on, Keith.
Thank you.
We've got one from Dylan as well.
Hi, Dylan.
Dylan, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, hi. Yeah, really enjoying your talk. And I was wondering this idea. Yeah, I was just wondering about this idea of the sense of self, because I really struggle to identify that, and I'm very strongly aware of what my values are and the sorts of maybe the sort of world I'd like to fight for. But this idea of a sense of self evades me a lot of the time. So I'd be interested to hear how you would sort of quantify that or put it into words.
Well, can I talk about it for a minute and then you see if it's striking any chords, Dylan?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So how I think about it, Dylan, like when you were born, you were born with a sense of self that existed before you'd learned that you have a name that's Dylan, right? Like if you ever spend time with a newborn, there's someone there. There's a presence there. And that's the self you were born with. And then we learn lots of stuff and we get lots of ideas and we get conditioned into ideas about who we are and that sort of thing. But that sense of self you were born with, that's still there, kind of behind the scenes, even if it's kind of being obscured and that it's still there. And so when I'm working with people, Dylan, my starting point is kind of to go, okay, the way that they're going to discover that is insightfully. They're going to realize it. They're not going to figure it out. Like I sure didn't. It kind of caught me by surprise. But it's there to be found. It's there to be found. So if you want to have more of an experience of that, just look in this direction, whether it's reading my books or listening. I've got podcast episodes and all kinds of stuff. It's one of the things I'm pointing to pretty resolutely is there's a you that was already there before you got issued with a name and a birth certificate and all that sort of stuff. And that the you that you were who you were to yourself at age 0 + 5 minutes, who you are to yourself at 0 millimeters away, rather than the you that you know from the mirror or from your picture on the screen. Like I can look at the screen here and go, oh yeah, that's me over there. But that's not me. That's a tiny square photo of me from a 18 inches away. That's not me. That's an image, right? So we've been conditioned to believe that who we are is these images of self. And I'm like, no, man, who you are is the one who's experiencing them. Anyway, I said I'd talk for a minute and that's probably been 3 minutes. So Dylan, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. And I certainly believe you and I trust in your expertise. And as you're speaking, I was sort of thinking back maybe to my childhood and trying to remember what you're describing. And then you talked about being 5 minutes old and there being a sense of self. And as you're speaking, I can honestly tell you that when I try to think back to what you're describing, there's a real sort of absence of anything.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying you should be able to remember it. This is something
No,
that you're gonna glimpse.
Okay.
I can remember hardly any of my childhood, so
no.
glad.
I mean, every time I try to quantify it, I think about my values and maybe the strengths people say I have, things like integrity and perseverance. Is that closer to what you're describing? Or
those are expressions of something closer to who you really are. But I'm talking about an experience, Dylan, like your true nature, your true self. It's you before you're thinking about stuff.
So how about this? So a few years ago, I went to the US, and I found a real sense of inner peace there that I haven't experienced anywhere else. And life was the same. All the challenges were the same. Everything was identical except for my capacity to address the challenges in my life. It's the only thing that was different. And there's something about being in the US and the sort of bigger spaces and the sense of peace. And just in general, there's something about the atmosphere was so much more manageable. So that's the closest I've ever got to what you're describing, this sort of sense of inner kind of satisfaction.
Yeah, no, I love that, Dylan. Now, here's what I'm going to suggest. Like if I was coaching you, right? If I was your coach, I'd be kind of getting philosophical with you and be kind of going like, what do you make of that? That you could go to a
That's
different
interesting.
country.
I love philosophy. Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, it's baffling. The only thing I've taken from it is that I want to live in the US one day.
Well, I understand that, but here's my assertion to you is that all those beautiful feelings of peace and satisfaction and well-being and capability and enjoyment, 100% of those came from the heart of your being. None of them came from the US.
All right.
100% of them came from within you. And not only that, every beautiful feeling you've ever experienced in your life came from within you. And everything you're ever going to experience in your whole life is going to come from within you. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the US. There's wonderful places to visit, but you have a source. I promise you, you have a source of peace and satisfaction and well-being within you that's capable of delivering that up to you anywhere on the planet.
Oh, thank you. I hope, well, I believe you and I hope I work out how to access it.
Well, don't take my word for it. You know, there's tons of free information and books and all sorts of stuff.
Well, one
Check
thing I
it
will
out.
do, I can tell you as first step is I'll read your book because
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with it before today, but I will definitely get hold of it and
Enjoy. And I think that experience you mentioned, that's a fantastic reference experience.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you.
No problem.
Jamie, if people want to know more about you, obviously your book is out now. The thing is, if you do go into, it's like Waterstones has got the big promotion, hasn't it? I believe.
It's usually Smith's.
Oh, Smith's. Sorry,
but
Smith's.
it's
So
big travel shops. So like
yeah,
airports in London and that sort of thing. But Amazon's the other one. Like Amazon everywhere you can get it.
and so obviously Clarity, and then the second edition of Clarity, which has just come out.
Yep.
Results is
Yep.
the other book as well.
Yep.
Your website is jamiesmart.com.
It
and
is.
to find out about coaching, it's jamiesmart.com / is it
Coach.
coaching?
Yep.
Coach / coach. If you want to bring, Clarity coaching into what you do. You have a podcast as well, if that's correct.
I have two podcasts. I have one called the Get Clarity podcast and one called the Thriving Coaches podcast.
Brilliant. So there's two podcasts there as well. I wanted to say a massive thank you. We've taken 90 minutes of your day, and he is going on holiday tomorrow, guys. So he goes, I can do the interview on Thursday. It'll be literally the last thing I do before I go on holiday.
Thing I do before I go on holiday.
Like I say, I've known Jamie now for like 10 years plus, and I just love listening to you speak and your
Thanks,
ideas and everything. Guys, thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. If you want to unmute to say goodbye, say thank you, please do so. I will send out a replay. I'll send the link to Jamie's book and everything as well. But Jamie, thank you so much. Have a great holiday. Guys, thank you very much for
and
joining
thank you,
us
Matt.
as well.
You do so much for the people in this community. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Because I get people to know, like, and trust me, Jamie.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matt. Have
Thank
a good
you.
weekend.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you. Bye. Cool. I'm going to